Hello everyone, it's Matt here from Scoop in Response, and today I have another Commander deck tech for you, and the card of course is Kenrith, the Returned King, one of the craziest commanders of all time in terms of just the sheer flexibility that you can have with a card like this. You can pretty well build this commander any which way you would like. You can have him as a tribal leader, you can have him as a reanimator, you can do all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff just with, reducing the cost of his activated abilities. He's a 5 mana, 5/5, and he's a legendary human noble, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 activated abilities, one in each color. Red is activate to gain trample and haste for all creatures. We have the white giving us 5 life, target player even, so you could save someone from death if you needed to. We've got the 1 and a green to put a +1 counter on target creature, and we've got 3 and a blue, target player draws a card. We've got 4 and a black, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control, so you can reanimate other things as well. So yeah, really flexible card. Now, we're actually going to be doing something a bit cheeky in that we kind of have a secret commander in this deck. It's a reasonably interesting approach to something like Kenrith. So the secret commander for this list is actually Muldrotha, and the reason that we are using Muldrotha is because of the way that the wording of this card reads. So it's during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So what that means is this was sort of pre-prepared for battles. You can cast battles from your graveyard with Muldrotha, so we get to recur them over and over again. Now, the engine that we're going to be using to set up this Muldrotha-Kenrith pair, and keeping in mind that Kenrith can reanimate Muldrotha as well, so if someone removes your Muldrotha, you can just cast it again or reanimate it, you can just reanimate it again. So really, I guess, resilient in that respect. You can also buff it if they try and, kill it with damage or something like that. So yeah, the Muldrotha is our secret commander. And yeah, effectively what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you a way to flip a whole bunch of these battles really easily, and yeah, we're going to just get some huge value out of this engine. So we'll jump in and we'll have a look at the battles first and foremost. So we've got 28 battles overall. So yeah, I guess there's, I think, 35, so we would have cut about 7 of them overall. So worth noting, the 7 that we have cut, probably the only one that's a bit big and splashy is the Ravnica, Invasion of Ravnica, which is a mythic, but it has everything to do with 2 color spells. And so even amongst the remaining battles that we have in the deck, there's really not that many 2 color spells in this complete deck. So that's why we've chosen to cut that. Then there was a few uncommon ones that were, 5 and 6 mana that just didn't really do much. So we cut those ones as well, and we sort of rounded it out at 28. So I won't go into the full details of all of them individually, but they are very cool. There's a whole range of different things that we're going to be getting value out of. There will be a few that I'll touch on. So things like Invasion of Ikoria is a Finale of Devastation that we can cast with our Muldrotha, so we can get one of our other creatures out of the deck. We've got Invasion of Armenket. You flip it and it will enter as a copy of another creature that's in a graveyard, so it doesn't have to be just yours either, it can be anyone's. Yeah, there's a load of insane value to be had with these battles, but particularly Invasion of Alara is like the big bad one. So whenever it ETBs, you exile cards until you find 2 non-land cards off the top of your deck. So you keep going through the lands, you find your first non-land, and then you find your second non-land. They have to be 4 or less mana value as well. You get to cast one for free, and then you get to put the other in your hand. So it's like already a 2-for-1. Now once you flip it though, that's where it really gets scary. So Awaken the Maelstrom, target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield, create a token that's a copy of a permanent you control, and that says permanent, not non-land permanent, so you can use it to ramp at the very least. Then you can distribute 3 +1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures you control and destroy target permanent and opponent controls. So this card just does literally everything. It's absolutely wild in terms of how much value you actually get out of it. Basically, from here, the only other big one is Invasion of Tolvada. So this is pretty cool because it's just return a non-battle permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. So they kill your Muldrotha or something else that's big in the deck that we'll go into, you can just get it back straight away. This is a really cool sort of reanimation spell, and the backside is like really, really cool. It's like a turbo Bitter Blossom, it makes the white and black spirit creatures, but it doesn't ping you each turn, and those creature tokens get +1/+0 and have lifelink. So blockers that have lifelink that fly is like sick. You're just never dying if they can't remove this, if you get to sort of untap a few times with this card on the field. So I think this is a really cool card. It sort of just flew by the wayside for me. I didn't really notice it straight away, but yeah, I really like this kind of thing, in general. Those are the battles. I guess the next part would be to have a look at the creatures in the deck. Now, we're only running 4 creatures in this list, and there's a very good reason for that. With all of our creatures here, you'll see that there is, something to do with either the graveyard or something to do with entering the battlefield or removing counters from a permanent. So we have Vampire Hexmage, which is the best way to flip a battle in a creature, basically, or just in general. It's 2 mana, and you can use it to kill a planeswalker or use it to remove all of the counters from a battle, so it'll flip. So you get your Invasion of Alara out, you find your Vampire Hexmage, and you flip it immediately, and you get just insane value. Or, if you want to keep the Vampire Hexmage and create a copy of the Vampire Hexmage, you can do that as well. So very, very cool for that. And there's ways that we can do that in the list too. Yarok the Desecrated is one of those ways, because if you have Yarok the Desecrated out, it has, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, so that means ETB triggers too, that ability triggers an additional time. So you get to do all of your battles twice with Yarok the Desecrated out, and you, basically with the Muldrotha out, you can, you play a battle, you play the Vampire Hexmage, you sack the Vampire Hexmage, you'll get 2 ETB triggers from the battle, and then you'll get to flip the battle straight away. It's just insane value, and it really doesn't matter which one of all of these that you want to use. They all just have these great effects for you to just keep going and going and going. Now, some of the battles will die straight away, because they're sorceries or things like that in the on the flip side, like the Alara that we mentioned, but then there's others that are going to just stay on the battlefield to give you value, like the Tolvada and things like that. Eternal Witness is a great way to get another go on your Vampire Hexmage. If you want to sort of stop, you don't want to have it in the graveyard for a full turn in case someone wants to exile it or something like that. Your Vampire Hexmage, you remove it, and then you return it back to your hand from the graveyard with the Ewit. So yeah, 4 creatures in the deck. We do have, quite a few token generators amongst the battles and other things, but there's a reason that we're only running 4 creatures in the list. Now, that card is the reason that we do that is the card called Oath of Druids. So Oath of Druids reads, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses target player who controls more creatures than he or she does, and his or her opponent. The first player may reveal cards from the top of their library till they reveal a creature card. So basically, if your opponent has a creature and you don't, or any of your opponents have more creatures than you do, you choose them, and then you reveal cards off the top of your library. And what's very cool about this effect is that it puts it in the graveyard. All of the cards that you flip over go into the graveyard, which is why we have Muldrotha. So Muldrotha, we see the all of the cards go into the bin. Muldrotha can then utilize them, and you've got a 1 in 4 chance of flipping the Muldrotha on the first go anyway. So really, really useful there. We have a few other ways that we can, remove some of the creatures from our library. So, we have Entomb and a few other effects with that, so that kind of like makes it a bit simpler. But the idea is that the Oath of Druids is kind of like the big piece that we're going to be looking for to execute sort of plan A for this. That said though, there's not a lot of sort of demonic tutors or vamp tutors or imperial seals in this list. You can absolutely go and add them to the deck if you want to power this up. I really like this build, mostly because The whole build outside of the mana base sort of came in at like $400 worth of cards, but they're all pretty much staples. So Oath of Druids is probably, you know, one of the only ones that, you know, hasn't been printed in the last 2 years that, you know, is there. And it's only a $5 card. So it's very, very cool. With that, you can just, you know, flip a whole bunch of, you know, your library into the bin, and you've got like an immediate bigger hand as a result of the Muldrotha. Now, the other thing that's worth noting with this card is it is a May trigger. So if you flip over all 4 of your cards, all 4 of your creatures are out of your deck, you're not going to just kill yourself if you don't want to, because it's a May trigger. You can choose not to resolve the trigger, you know, unless you want to put the rest of your library in the graveyard. Now, there are some reasons that you would want to do that. These are the remaining cards in the deck. We're going to go over it all sort of in one go. But in terms of why we would want to put our entire library into the deck, our entire library into the graveyard, is we have cards that sort of work really well together, like Amulet of Vigor, which is this bad boy. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped and under your control, untap it. And then we have another card called Splendid Reclamation. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So if you have a way to mill your entire deck, you can just play your Amulet of Vigor from the graveyard, and then you just need a way to put the Splendid Reclamation back into your deck. Now, we're running one way to do that, but there's we're running quite a few ways, but we're running one way when you don't have any cards in hand to do that. And the way that is done is Memory's Journey. So if you put your entire library in the bin, in upkeep as well, so it's before your draw step, before you move to your draw step, you flash back Memory's Journey for 1 green. You use Memory's Journey to just put 1 card on top of your deck if you have Muldrotha, or maybe 2 if you don't have Muldrotha, and you put the Amulet of Vigor and the Splendid Reclamation back into your deck.
So you've got access to all of your mana, and hopefully you can win the game from there. Now, I've avoided putting in like shuffle mechanics for the most part. The major shuffle mechanic that's going to stop you from losing the game is Nexus of Fate. So Nexus of Fate is a very weirdly worded card, because the only way that you can stop this from basically going back into your library is if they either Mindbreak Trap or Force of Negation you, which is going to exile the card, because it's a replacement effect for graveyard. So it beats Douthie Voidwalker, it beats any kind of one-shot exile effect for graveyards. It beats Leyline of the Void because it never goes to the graveyard. It always, if it gets countered, if it gets cast, it goes straight back into the library. It doesn't ever go into the graveyard. So there'll be instances where, you know, you'll do this and this will be the only card in your deck. Now that's like all well and good. You know, if you can sort of have all access to your mana and just take infinite turns, that's like obviously a game winner right there. This is not necessarily to like get you to win the game. You know, if you're not wanting to sort of take infinite turns, there are other ways that you can sort of build this around. You know, you could have a Shuffle Titan.
And obviously the Oath of Druids is going to find the Shuffle Titan and put it onto the battlefield, and you don't really want that. So we have Elixir of Immortality as well, so you may want to flash back Memory's Journey and put the Elixir of Immortality, and the your 3 cards might be Elixir of Immortality, Splendid Reclamation, and Amulet of Vigor, or something like that. The other option would be you could put Paradise Lost, you could put Mana Bond. So Paradise Lost and then Mana Bond. The way that these will work together is you play the Mana Bond and then you cast the Paradise Lost. You return any number of cards of total amount value X or less from your graveyard to your hand. So if you roll 2d6, the lowest you can get is 2. So at the very worst, you get a 2 plus all of your 0 drops, which are all of your lands, your Mana Crypt, your Soul, Lotus Petal, anything else in the deck that is 0. But, you know, sometimes it'll be more than that. So if you have Mana Bond and you literally just take all of the cards, all of the land cards from your deck into your hand, and then you choose to discard your hand, you basically just get the all of your lands into play. Now, the other thing that's cool is that if you draw the Nexus of Fate with Mana Bond in your hand, you'll discard the Nexus of Fate, and then it'll go back into your deck so that you don't like you don't kill yourself in your upkeep from drawing with an empty library. So that's a really cool synergy with that. We've got a lot of sort of generic ramp cards. So we've got your Wild Growth, Utopia Sprawl, Exploration, and obviously the Mana Bond as well. Those are really good ramp cards for the your just general 1-drops. While we're on the topic of enchantments, Mystic Remora is a card that you can just cast if you just want to play your enchantment for turn as this, let it die each turn, or let it die every second turn, and then recast it with Muldrotha from the bin. So you play it for 1 blue mana, goes a turn around, then you pay a generic mana upkeep the next turn, and then you let it die, and then you cast it on that 3rd turn again, and it's basically a fish that just keeps coming back. Animate Dead is another cool way to sort of get a second chance with your Vampire Hexmage with Muldrotha. So you get to cast the Muldrotha, and then the Vampire, you get to have the Vampire Hexmage cast with Muldrotha, you sack it, and then you Animate Dead the Vampire Hexmage to get another battle to flip again. So yeah, really useful with that. Training Grounds is super strong with Kenrith because it just powers out all of your activated abilities become so cheap then. Those are all of the enchantments. We've got artifacts, so Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt's not super needed in this list. Mana Vault, same thing. These are both mostly just about getting your Kenrith out. It's just turboing it out, having an access to like 3 colored mana, is really useful. Sorry, 3 colorless mana when your commander costs, 4 colorless and a white. So these are super useful. We've got Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, and all 3 of the Sultai or Bug talismans. These are the good ones to have in this list because we're mostly Bug. We have like red and white cards as well, but not as many of them. So that's, I guess, the majority of what we're looking at with the artifacts here is to basically just fix our mana, accelerate, and then a few tech pieces like the Amulet of Vigor with those things that we discussed with how that combos, and the Elixir of Immortality to basically shuffle things back into the deck as well. For instance, in Sorceries, we have Dark Blast is really cool. So Dark Blast is interesting. If you don't want to play a dredge card, other than if you don't like dredge or anything like that, that's fine. There's very little dead hits in our deck. There's only 13 non-permanent cards in this deck, and so it means that we're not super scared of it. And on top of that, we've got cards that won't actually dredge. So we've got Nexus of Fate, and then Memory Journey has flashback, so we don't need to cast it from our hand necessarily. Same with Savine's Reclamation. So 6 out of the 13 non-permanent cards in the deck, don't matter. So it's 7 cards that we're worried about hitting that we might not get access to. We can always get it back with Ewit still. So we'll run through them one by one. Dark Blast is a dredge card, so useful for fueling the graveyard, but it also gives target creature -1/-1 till end of turn. So this is obviously like Dork removal, which is sweet, but our Eternal Witness has 1 toughness. So we can use this in a pinch to kill our own Eternal Witness, cast it again from the graveyard, or Animate Dead, or whatever we want to do, so that we can sort of either protect things or just get them back to our hand, or whatever we need to do with that. So really, really versatile there. It's great for killing Dorks. It's great for, as a combat trick. At instant speed, you can activate Kenrith to draw a card and replace the draw with a dredge. So you get this back into your hand and it's an instant. So really, really powerful with Kenrith at the helm. Enlightened Tutor is the only tutor that we've got that's you sort of straight up to top of library or to hand tutor. And it's just because, we want to find Oath of Druids. So I put that in. If you don't like playing that kind of deck, you want to sort of rely on the luck of the draw, by all means, put cut it, put something else in the deck. Totally fine. Entomb, I think this card is great. Most of the time, I want to be entombing my Life from the Loam. So making sure that we have land drops. So you entomb the Life from the Loam, you dredge 3, and then you're always going to be able to hit your land drops. So this means that, we've got I think 34, 35 lands in the deck, but you can cut it down to 31 if you're running fetch lands and things like that as well, because you're never going to miss a land drop unless someone exiles this with a Life from the Loam, because it's just super useful to have, access to all of those lands, particularly if you're dredging them away, or you've already got your Oath of Druids out. We've got Pull from Eternity. So this is a bit of a niche one, but put target face-up card that's removed from the game into its owner's library. So sometimes you're going to get an unlucky one-shot or a Fairy Macabre or something like that, where someone exiles either a bunch or some of your graveyard, and you're not going to like it very much. Probably the worst offenders will be things like your unlicensed hearse that can keep just going and going and going, and you're going to need to sort of have a way to deal with that. That's going to mostly be in your battles. That's where you're going to have something to deal with that. This is just a way to sort of stop you from like losing the game if you were going to. You could like get back your Nexus of Fate if you wanted to. This is a great way. You're going to draw an upkeep where you just pull from Eternity, and then you get the Nexus of Fate that someone force negated or mind break trapped or something. It goes straight back into your deck. Memory's Journey, we've touched on this. Shuffle up to 3 target cards from your library, from your graveyard into your library. If you take note, it says shuffle, so it means that you can't stack your deck. If you play a Sylvan Library, then you'll be able to see those 3 cards perfectly fine in the order that you want them, and choose which one you want on top. But yeah, just don't forget that it is it is a shuffle effect. There is another card you can include, which is very, very good. I typically play both of them together. It's called Turn the Earth. It's not in this list just because I just felt that we didn't really need 2 copies of the card in this power level of deck, and people aren't going to be like hating you out that full on. Turn the Earth is really good as well. It's the exact same setup. It's like, except it's 1 mana to cast from hand, 2 mana to flash it back, but you gain 2 life from it as well. It also lets you pick 3 cards. It doesn't have to be 1 player. It can just be 3 cards, and they go into their owners' libraries. Paradise Lost, we've touched on that. Raven's Crime. So another thing that you could do is after you Paradise Lost, your entire library's worth of land cards, you could just retrace Raven's Crime from your graveyard 30 times or something like that to get all of your opponents to be hellbent, give them no cards in hand. So this is a bit cute, but it's just another card that you want to be able to use your hand in a way that is interesting and useful. If you're able to cast, land cards from the graveyard, you're actually getting 2 uses out of the land card then, right? So you Raven's Crime, from the graveyard, discarding a land card, and then you play that discarded land card from the graveyard onto the battlefield rather than just playing it from your hand. You've got free value. Life from the Loam, we've gone over that one. Render Inert removes 5 counters from target permanent. In a pinch, you can kill a Planeswalker, but it's mostly for killing our own battles, but it also cantrips too, so super cool with that. Now, also worth noting, the permanent doesn't have to have counters for you to target it. You can just target anything and draw a card. You can do cute things, if your opponent has a Gemstone Caverns, you can remove the luck counter from it. If there's a Chalice of the Void, you can remove, the 2 charge counters on the Chalice of the Void or the Ever-Flowing Chalice. There's plenty of things that have counters on them that, people are going to be sad when they're gone. Savine's Reclamation, this is just a great, reanimation spell, 2 battles back, or just literally anything you like, the Vampire Hexmage and the Eternal Witness or something like that. Splendid Reclamation, we've gone on that one. Aether Snap, remove all counters from all permanents and exile all tokens. So if you have like 10 battles out and you just Aether Snap, you just get all of them flipping all at once. So very, very cool card as a one-shot. So that pretty well wraps up everything that we have in the deck except for lands. So as usual, no one is going to stop you from having the most expensive or the least expensive mana base you could ever want. The only cards I'm really going to show you, you can have a look at the full deck tech to sort of look at it in detail, but we have a Thespian Stage. But we have a Thespian Stage mostly because we have a Dark Depths. Now Dark Depths is typically not the greatest in Commander, but when you have a Vampire Hexmage that you can very reliably get, and you can reliably get your lands, all of a sudden this becomes like, pretty good. So that's, I guess, the reason for including that in the list. Now I'll say, go and check out the full list in the description. It'll have a link there. And as a bit of a bonus, I wanted to do, the 5 color for this deck. We wanted Kenrith to really shine with this, but I'm going to leave in the comments, I'll leave a link in the description to a Muldrotha as commander version of the deck. So you can only play 17 battles, and I'd probably only be playing like 16 of them. But, we go a bit deeper into the removing counters. We've got a Hex Parasite, you've got Glissa Sunslayer, but the same things are there, Eternal Witness, Yarok the Desecrated, and because of that, we're sort of in a bit of a more poly-tyrant type approach with the Oath of Druids. So we've got a Hullbreaker Horror and Tidespout Tyrant. This deck is like a little bit more spiky. We've got Buried Alive. We can put some of the stuff in the bin, but the core of the deck is the same. We've got Crucible of Worlds, Phyrexian Altar in this one, but yeah, other than that, it's not really that different. So I'll leave a link for that in the description of the deck as well. Yeah, that pretty well wraps it up. Yeah, really enjoyed putting this one together. I think the battles are a really cool addition to Commander. I'm really excited to see how other players are going to build them. Hopefully you're going to get a bit of value out of this one. I think that this is like a really sweet way that you could build Kenrith in 2023, now that all the battles are out. And it's really just, cards like Kenrith, commanders like Kenrith are really just going to get better and better as you go on. And I mean, if you just, something like having the training grounds, which has just been reprinted in Aftermath, so it'll be really cheap. A training grounds just means 1 white lets you gain 5 life. You're just never dying in that situation. It's super good. Yeah, thanks for checking out the list. If you enjoyed it, be sure to let me know in the comments. Don't forget to eat your vegetables. And yeah, I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.